Only those who listen until the very end will grasp the full horror that awaits. And I promise it will haunt every corner of your mind. That IT began at the edge of Hollow Creek, a quiet town where the fog never lifted and the streetlights flickered like dying eyes. The first sound was faint, a child singing. Not just any song, but a nursery rhyme, soft and sweet, echoing as if the walls themselves whispered along. At first, it was charming, almost comforting. But then, the notes twisted, slow and jagged, like glass scraping bone. Doors trembled. Shadows stretched unnaturally across the walls, curling toward the melody. Hungry, Emma, a young mother, held her baby close, heart thundering. She had seen the town change before, strange marks appearing on doors, whispers in the alleys. But this was different. The rhyme was alive. Its words crawled into her mind. Round and round the shadows creep, secrets wake from endless sleep. Each line painted a grotesque image, a dark corridor lined with faceless dolls, their tiny mouths moving in silent screams. Down the street, Mr. Hargrove, the old clockmaker, froze mid-step. His hands trembled as the song swirled around him. Mirrors in his shop fogged, then cleared to show not his reflection, but the pale face of a child he didn't know. Its eyes were hollow, black wells that seemed to swallow the light. He blinked. Gone. Only the echo of laughter remained. In Emma's home, the lights flickered. A rocking chair moved on its own, creaking in rhythm with the rhyme. Her baby cooed, but the lullaby had changed tone. It was a chant now, each word punctuated by a sudden gust of cold air that made the curtains whip like frantic arms. The walls themselves seemed to pulse. Emma backed into the corner, clutching her child, every instinct screaming to run, but the front door wouldn't open. Outside, the fog thickened. Shadows moved beneath it, long, crawling shapes that were not human. Suddenly, the nursery rhyme's tune doubled, overlapping itself. Emma heard it coming from every direction, through the walls, beneath the floorboards, even inside her skull. Her own voice screamed words she hadn't spoken. She turned to the crib. The baby's eyes were open, wide and empty, singing along in a voice not its own. The temperature dropped sharply. Breath became visible, twisting like smoke, forming shapes that whispered secrets Emma didn't want to know. A knock came at the window. Slow, deliberate. Emma froze. Outside, standing in the fog, was a figure, a small child, pale as chalk, face blurred, eyes a hollow abyss. It raised one thin finger, pointing at her. And then, as quickly as it appeared, it vanished. But the rhyme didn't stop. It grew louder, merging with the sound of the fog pressing against the house, the creaking of the floor, the pounding of her heart. Every shadow in the room stretched toward her, alive, as if drawn by the song. That Emma's scream joined the rhyme. She realized she was no longer alone in the house. Or perhaps she had never been. The song had been waiting, listening, shaping itself around the fear of anyone who heard it. And outside, the fog whispered, carrying the blood-stained lullaby to the rest of Hollow Creek. By the next night, Hollow Creek had changed. The fog now swallowed whole streets, muffling the world into an eerie silence that made every footstep sound like a scream. The nursery rhyme had spread, carried on the cold wind, curling into every home. Those who had heard it once now whispered the words in their sleep, murmuring lines they didn't remember learning. And with each repetition, the shadows grew bolder. Emma's house was no longer her sanctuary. The walls had dark veins running across them, like a living network feeding on fear. Every corner seemed to pulse in rhythm with the lullaby. The rocking chair continued its slow dance, but now it moved toward her. She tried to leave the room, but the doors had vanished, replaced by smooth walls that weren't there before. Panic gripped her. She couldn't scream. The sound was stolen, trapped in the air like a broken note. Down the street, a group of teenagers dared each other to explore the abandoned chapel at the edge of town. Inside, the walls were scrawled with the rhyme in a child's handwriting. Perfect, looping letters that seemed to crawl when no one looked directly at them. As they read aloud, one by one, the floorboards moaned under invisible weight. A chill climbed their spines, and from the darkness, something watched. Tiny fingers scraped against the pews, then disappeared. The air smelled of wet earth and decay. When the youngest turned to leave, he saw dozens of shadowed children standing silently, faces featureless, staring, singing the nursery rhyme in unison. Back at Emma's, the baby sat upright in the crib, staring at the ceiling where shadows now moved like living ink. A low, guttural hum joined the nursery rhyme, a tone that vibrated inside her chest. She tried to cover her ears, but the sound seeped through her skin, settling into her bones. And then the shadows moved closer, not crawling or creeping, but gliding, floating just above the floor, forming shapes that resembled twisted versions of her neighbors, friends, and strangers she had seen on the street. Their mouths moved in sync with the song, revealing teeth too long, too sharp, glinting in the dim light. Emma's reflection appeared suddenly in the window, though she hadn't moved. But it wasn't her. The reflection's eyes were hollow, its mouth stretched in a permanent scream. It mouthed the rhyme, faster and faster. Then, her real baby reached toward the reflection, laughing, a laugh that shattered like glass. The walls groaned, the floor trembled, and a door appeared behind her, dripping with a black, tar-like substance. It swung open to reveal a corridor she had never seen before, lined with more faceless children, whispering secrets she could not comprehend. Outside, the fog shifted. Figures moved within it, countless pale faces peeking through the mist, singing in voices that blended with the wind. Hollow Creek had become a playground for the rhyme. Whoever walked the streets after dark was never seen again. The townspeople whispered that the song was alive, feeding on fear, and if you listened too long, it would follow you home. Emma realized the truth. The nursery rhyme didn't just haunt the town, it hunted. Every shadow, every corner, every reflection was now alive. And from somewhere deep within the fog, she heard the faintest echo of her own voice joining the chant, repeating the words she had tried so hard to forget. The lullaby was no longer just a song. It was a warning, a promise. And by the next morning, anyone who survived would never hear silence again. That'd be why now. Hollow Creek was no longer a town. It was a shadow of itself. Streets lay empty, windows stared blankly like hollow eyes, and the fog clung to every corner, thick and suffocating. The nursery rhyme had spread beyond whispers. It now followed the townspeople into their dreams. Those who had ignored it during the day awoke screaming, drenched in sweat, the chant lingering in their minds, slow and jagged, like fingernails scraping a coffin lid. Emma had tried to leave the house. Every road she took looped her back to the same foggy corner, where the shadows of faceless children waited silently. Even when she closed her eyes, the rhyme continued. The baby's laughter rang in her ears, chillingly unnatural, blending with the echoing chant. Each syllable painted grotesque visions, a playground of twisted swings, slides coated in rust and blood, and children crawling from the soil with skin pale as moonlight. Families began vanishing. Doors locked from the inside. Windows sealed themselves, and no one heard cries. Only the song remained. In one home, the Hendersons disappeared while eating dinner. Plates shattered, chairs toppled, and their dog ran screaming into the fog, never to return. Neighbors whispered the rhyme had chosen them. Whoever the song touched, it claimed, bending reality to pull them into its dark, endless chorus. Emma wandered the streets, desperate. Every familiar landmark now looked foreign. Maple Street's lampposts wept black liquid, and the old train tracks, once abandoned, hummed the nursery rhyme, echoing like a monstrous heartbeat. The faceless children emerged from the mist, gliding silently. One reached out a thin, cold hand toward her, and she felt the world twist. Time slowed, streetlights flickered into burning embers, and the shadows around her danced in sync with the lullaby. She ran into the town library, seeking refuge among dusty shelves. Books flew from shelves without reason, opening to pages full of the rhyme written over and over in crimson ink. It filled the air, and suddenly the words leapt off the pages, forming shapes, tiny children with hollow eyes, creeping along the floorboards toward her. Emma backed into a corner, realizing with horror that the rhyme was feeding on fear itself. Every heartbeat strengthened it, and the longer she listened, the stronger it became. Then, a voice called her name, a whisper at first, soft and almost tender. But it twisted into a scream, dragging her toward the darkest corner of the library. A hidden trapdoor yawned open beneath her feet. She fell into a corridor, walls covered in the nursery rhyme, each word glowing faintly. Shadows swirled around her, forming faces of people she knew, their mouths stretched in silent screams. At the end of the corridor, a single door stood ajar. Beyond it, she glimpsed the source, the child who had started it all, pale, faceless, singing in a voice that filled the entire town. Carrying a promise of death and despair, Emma's mind spun. The curse wasn't just in the rhyme, it was in the town itself. Every street, every building, every shadow now lived to echo that song. She realized the truth with a shiver. Whoever heard it once would never escape. The rhyme had claimed Hollow Creek, and the faceless child, small and impossibly still, looked directly at her, raising a tiny hand as if inviting her to join the endless chorus of the cursed. And from somewhere deep within the fog, the lullaby's voice changed, soft now, almost playful. "Come play with us, forever." Emma thought she had seen the worst, but Hollow Creek had only begun to show its teeth. The town was alive with whispers now, the nursery rhyme weaving into every thought, every heartbeat. People she passed on empty streets looked normal at first, until their eyes blackened, hollowed like her babies, and they hummed the song without moving their lips. Panic became impossible to fight. Reality itself felt like a fragile glass, ready to shatter with each note. She stumbled into the old bakery on Willow Lane, hoping for refuge. Flour coated the floor, rising in ghostly swirls as if stirred by invisible hands. The ovens glowed faintly, though they had long been cold. From the shadows, faceless children emerged, crawling on hands and knees, their fingers clicking like tiny bones against the tiles. Emma froze, watching them circle her. The baby, now walking unnaturally, followed each movement with a fixed, sinister smile. Her own reflection in the cracked mirror across the room mocked her. The face staring back twisted her expressions into grotesque parodies of fear. The reflection whispered the rhyme, faster and faster, voices multiplying until the walls themselves seemed to chant. Emma realized with horror that the song wasn't just external, it had burrowed into her mind. Every thought was no longer her own. She tried to concentrate on anything else, the floorboards, the smell of stale bread, the foggy night outside, but the lullaby overpowered all sense, twisting memories into grotesque versions of reality. Emma's baby began to sing aloud now, high-pitched and eerie. Words came out that Emma had never taught it, lines of the nursery rhyme that promised pain, shadows, and death. And yet, the baby's voice sounded innocent, sweet, a perverse echo of childhood. She screamed for help, but her voice cracked and dissolved into the fog outside. Every second felt stretched, elongated, the room breathing with the rhythm of the rhyme. Suddenly, the shadows in the bakery walls peeled off like wet paper. They became faces of neighbors, friends, even herself, distorted, screaming without sound. Each figure repeated the rhyme, their mouths moving impossibly wide. Emma's sanity teetered. The child, the pale, faceless singer, appeared in the corner, smaller than any human, yet impossibly commanding. Its tiny hand pointed at her. The rhyme seemed to pour from its mouth directly into her skull. Every heartbeat brought more shadows, more distorted faces, more whispers. Emma tried to run, but the bakery had grown impossibly large, corridors stretching into dark infinity. Windows showed streets that weren't there, alleys that twisted impossibly, leading her back to the same pale child every time. And then, she saw her neighbors, missing for days, their hollow eyes now filled with the song. Wandering endlessly, caught in the nursery rhyme's grip, the child sang a final line, slower, almost gentle. "Your fear makes us strong." A cold hand touched her shoulder, yet no one was there. Emma fell to her knees, realizing that the curse wasn't just in Hollow Creek or in the rhyme. It was in her mind. Every sound, every shadow, every heartbeat had been feeding it. And in that moment, she understood. The child hadn't just started the song. It had always been waiting, inside the town, inside her, inside anyone who dared hear it. The nursery rhyme wasn't a warning anymore. It was a trap, a virus of fear, and she had been infected completely. Outside, the fog carried the echoes further, swallowing the night, promising that no one would sleep in Hollow Creek again. Hollow Creek was no longer a town. It was a living nightmare. The streets, once familiar, now writhed with shadows that reached for anyone who dared step outside. The nursery rhyme had become an omnipresent force, pulsing through the air, thick and sticky like molasses, dragging fear into every corner. Emma stumbled forward, clutching her baby, whose hollow eyes now reflected every horror around them. Each note of the rhyme warped reality, bending buildings, turning walls into mouths that whispered secrets only madness could understand. On Elm Street, a group of people huddled in the diner. Chairs flew on their own, smashing tables as the windows fogged with the shapes of faceless children. The jukebox began to play the lullaby, though it hadn't been plugged in for years. Lights flickered violently, and the shadows on the walls shifted into horrific shapes: elongated limbs, twisted torsos, mouths that opened too wide, revealing sharp rows of teeth. Each figure seemed alive, hungry, moving closer in sync with the rhyme. Emma ran through the diner, only to witness Mrs. Carter, a neighbor, twist and bend unnaturally. Her arms grew long and thin, her face stretching like rubber as she sang the nursery rhyme backward, her voice warped and dripping with malice. Plates shattered around her, raining shards that floated midair, circling Emma like knives. The baby laughed, small hands pointing at the chaos, singing along as though guiding the carnage. Outside, the fog thickened further. The street lamps melted into black puddles, and the road seemed to stretch endlessly. Emma caught glimpses of her missing neighbors crawling out of the fog, skin pale, eyes empty, mouths moving with the song. One reached for her, dissolving into shadows as she blinked. The rhyme twisted their bodies, warping them, turning familiar faces into grotesque sculptures of fear and pain. She tried to flee, but the town itself seemed alive. Houses groaned, roofs bending as though trying to crush her. Trees bent unnaturally, their branches scratching the sky. The nursery rhyme followed her, growing louder, more powerful, each note cracking the air like glass. Emma's mind teetered on the edge of collapse, each heartbeat feeding the song, making it stronger, faster, more relentless. Then she saw it. The child, pale, faceless, impossibly small, standing in the middle of the street. Shadows swirled around it like a living cloak. Its tiny hand rose, and the world around Emma tore apart. Walls split, streets melted into darkness, and the townspeople became twisted echoes of themselves, endlessly trapped in the nursery rhyme's grip. Emma's vision blurred, yet she saw every horror clearly. The buildings crying, the fog screaming, the shadows devouring everything in their path. And then the song changed. The child's voice became 2, 4, dozens, an army of faceless voices singing, surrounding her, pressing in, impossible to escape. Emma realized with gut-wrenching terror that there was no hiding, no running. The nursery rhyme had claimed the town entirely. Even her baby, once innocent, now joined the chorus, its laughter echoing like breaking bones. The last thing Emma saw before the darkness swallowed her was the child raising both hands toward the sky. And the lullaby's words boomed across Hollow Creek, louder than any scream. "Come play forever with us." The streets went silent. The fog thickened, and somewhere, just beyond the veil of perception, the nursery rhyme waited for the next soul to hear it. Emma awoke, or thought she did. The town was eerily silent. Fog lay heavy over Hollow Creek, swallowing streets in a thick gray veil. But the lullaby hadn't ended. It hummed faintly, just at the edge of hearing, a sinister heartbeat beneath reality. Every shadow seemed to twitch, every corner alive, as if waiting for her next move. Her baby slept peacefully, or so it seemed. Its lips twitched in a faint smile, mouthing words Emma could not remember teaching. She stepped outside, hoping to escape the nightmare, but the streets were wrong. Maple Lane twisted unnaturally, curving into alleys that didn't exist before. Streetlights flickered and died, plunging the town into pockets of absolute darkness. From the fog, shapes emerged, dozens of faceless children, pale and silent, their mouths opening in perfect sync with the nursery rhyme. They didn't move like humans, but glided, hovering just above the ground, circling Emma with patient malice. The houses were no longer houses. Windows became eyes, doors became gaping mouths. Emma could hear the echo of voices inside, neighbors, friends, strangers, all singing the lullaby, trapped forever in the child's song. Panic seized her chest. The baby's hand reached for hers, but instead of warmth, she felt icy fingers curling around her own. The lullaby grew louder, threading through her mind, promising the same fate as everyone before her. Emma ran, but every street led back to the same fog-choked square. There, the pale, faceless child stood, impossibly still, as if it had been waiting all along. Shadows swirled around it, forming faces she recognized, faces of those who had vanished, twisted into endless echoes of the song. The child raised a tiny hand, and the fog thickened, pressing into her lungs, whispering, "Your fear belongs to us." Emma tried to scream, but no sound came. She stumbled backward, falling into the cracks of reality, the nursery rhyme threading into every corner of her vision. Then she saw the ultimate horror, her own reflection in the cracked pavement, smiling, faceless, singing in her voice, calling to the next victim. The lullaby wasn't done. It had only begun. From the darkness, a whisper floated toward her, soft yet unbearable. "Whoever hears it joins us forever." The fog shifted. Emma vanished. The square lay empty, silent, but a single note of the nursery rhyme lingered, floating through Hollow Creek, waiting, carrying the curse further. A crow cawed in the distance, or was it a child laughing? No one could tell. The town held its breath, the song echoing in every shadow, every wall, every heartbeat. And somewhere, just beyond the fog, a new listener would hear the first note. The nursery rhyme never ends. If you enjoyed this horror story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell icon for more terrifying stories.